All right, we're here aboard the Queen Mary now, and we just took the Glory Days tour. It was absolutely fantastic. We had an amazing guide named Chris. And the thing is, you're not allowed to film your guide while you're going on the tour, but you can take notes on the facts they give you and share those. So I'm going to share with you some of my favorite facts about the Queen Mary. So we're going to start it off. Fact number one is that a lot of people associate the Queen Mary with the Titanic. And there's a reason why people do that. It's because the Queen Mary was built by the Cunard Line. However, the Cunard Line ran out of funding, and it needed to partner with someone so that the British Parliament would give them more funding. They had to partner with the White Star Line, and White Star Line famously owned the Titanic, and that's why people regularly link these ships together. And another thing is that people don't really know the size of this ship or the size of the Titanic, but the Queen Mary is actually much bigger than the Titanic, and 1.5 Titanic ships could fit inside the R.M.S. Queen Mary. So that's fun fact number one. Now we're going to walk around the ship, and I'm going to share with you some other fun spots and details that we learned. Thanks so much for watching. If you get the chance, definitely come to the Queen Mary and take this tour yourself. But for right now, let's talk about some more fun facts. One more fun fact actually before we move out of this location. She is actually the first ship that was ever built that was over 1,000 feet long. She is 1,019.5 feet long, so that's another fun fact about the Queen Mary. And if you're wondering what R.M.S. stands for, she's actually called the R.M.S. Queen Mary. That actually stands for Royal Mail Ship, and that's because she actually did transport mail from Britain over here to New York. That was the route that she used to take. So another fun fact. Let's go find some other cool locations to share with you more things about the Queen Mary. So some more fun things about the Queen Mary that you might not know. She originally launched on September 26, 1934, so it's been almost 90 years. And when she did launch, nobody knew what her name was yet. Everybody thought she was going to be named after other ships from that line that would be like the Britannia. They usually ended in IA. They had no idea it was going to be named after a living royal. It was actually the first ship to ever be named after a living royal. So that's why she's called the Queen Mary, and she was there to christen the ship herself 90 years ago. So originally, before she was named the Queen Mary officially, they just called her Job 534. And Job 534 was not renamed the Queen Mary until her launching ceremony. This is a very old photograph from 1934 that actually shows this is Queen Mary and this is King George. And this is the ceremony where they actually launched the ship on September 26, 1934. Next up, we're going to go take a look inside here, inside the Queen's Salon. Now, the Queen's Salon is one of the most beautiful and most important rooms here on the Queen Mary. It actually, back when the ship was sailing, would have been a first-class lounge, but now is a place where events happen and is just a very important historical room with a lot of really gorgeous Art Deco detail. This room was designed around all things musical, and you can see those musical details all around the room. Just like right here in the glass above the fireplace, you can see that there are a bunch of etchings of musical instruments. And just being in this room feels expensive. Even the fireplaces are made of gold onyx. Visiting the Queen's Salon was one of our favorite things that we did while we were on this tour, because you cannot actually go into the Queen's Salon unless you are as part of a tour group or unless you're there for an event that's specifically happening within the Queen's Salon. So just keep that in mind. If you want to see this room, you do have to have a tour booked or you have to have an event happening in that room. Otherwise, regular guests do not get to see this room. And now let's talk about this incredible masterpiece of art that is in the Queen's Salon, which is very important for a couple of different reasons. But first of all, I just want to point out that this artwork is actually made of cement and plaster, which surprises a lot of people, but it is absolutely incredible to see in person. And now take a look at those boxes that look like cutouts in the middle of paintings. Those were actually where the projectors would have been back when they used to project movies in this room, including in 1938 when they projected The Wizard of Oz. And let's talk about the unicorns. There are 2 unicorns depicted as fighting in this mural, and they are actually important for 2 different reasons. First of all, in mythology, 2 unicorns fighting would produce music, and the theme of this room was music. And let's take a look at the color of these unicorns. The unicorn on the left, the white unicorn, is meant to represent the White Star Line, and the gold unicorn represents the Cunard Line, which are the 2 ship lines that had to merge together so that the British government would give the Cunard Line enough funding to finish the building of the Queen Mary. This picture right here is really important. This picture was taken in 1940 in the New York Harbor, and these were the 3 largest ocean liners at the time. These were all built in the 19th century. This was the SS Normandy, the Queen Mary is here in the middle, and this is the Queen Elizabeth. By 1942, this ship had already sunk in the New York Harbor, and only 2 of them were actually left. This ship, the Queen Elizabeth, actually ended up later sinking in 1974, so currently the Queen Mary is the only one still in existence from this photo. Also, in this photo, it's hard to tell, obviously, because it's in black and white, but by the time this photo was taken in 1940, this ship was already painted fully gray because it was actually serving in World War II. So I mentioned here that she was painted gray to serve in the war, and they actually called her the Gray Ghost, and she was the fastest ship at her time. So she actually never got attacked during her 6 years of service during the war because U-boats couldn't catch her and she could outrun a torpedo. So she was never attacked during her service. She did, however, transport the largest number of passengers at any given time across the sea. She transported over 16,000 passengers in one crossing during the war. To give you a scope of reference of how big that is, the largest cruise ship that exists right now, the Icon of the Seas, only takes 7,500 passengers at a time, and she took over 16,000. That's how large this boat is. Also, the rules were different back then during the war, and she was transporting troops, but still, that's a lot of people to have on one boat at one time. So in 1947, the Queen Mary was done serving in the war, so she stopped being gray and she was retrofitted back to the colors that you see today. And then in 1967, she was bought by the city of Long Beach for $3.45 million. She was brought here to Long Beach to be a maritime attraction. And then if you want to zoom in here on the boat, we're going to take a look at where passengers' accommodations were back in the day when she was still accommodating passengers, not during the time she was in the war. Back then, if you were a first-class passenger, you'd be in the blue section in the middle of the boat. The second-class passengers would be in the orange section towards the back of the boat, and the third-class passengers were in the yellow section in the front of the boat, and the green sections that you see there were actually for the crew. And then you can also see where the boilers and engine room were on the ship. Obviously, first-class accommodations were the best because the ship did not move as much in the middle. And fun fact, the nickname for the ship was actually the Rolling Mary because so many people got seasick while they were on the ship. They actually used to tie ropes along the ship so that people could stay standing. That's how much the ship rocked left to right. And as part of our tour, we did get to tour a first-class stateroom. This is the stateroom that would have been used for 2 passengers in 1936 aboard the Queen Mary, and the price for that for 2 passengers would have been $1,000 total for 2 passengers, so approximately $500 per person to cross the Atlantic, which was a 4 to 5 day trip. Just for reference, $1,000 back in 1936 is worth about $23,000 now in 2024. And that price was just for this normal standard room. That was not the price for a suite. This was just a normal first-class passenger, what their room looks like, and how much they would have paid. And while we head back to look at more of the ship, I just want to show you this painting real quick. These 2 paintings in the lobby area at the Queen Mary actually depict Queen Elizabeth and Prince Philip. And in the lobby, there was also this beautiful piano that was played regularly during our time on the ship, and this piano is original to the ship and was there as of 1936 when the ship was built. Now let's take a look at something else iconic on the ship. This is Queen Mary's bell, which actually weighs 350 pounds, is tuned to the key of F, and when it was rung, it could be heard for 10 miles. And here there's a sign for it saying it was dedicated to the honor and memory of the Queen Mary and the ship's personnel for safely transporting over 750,000 personnel during the war. And the R.M.S. Queen Mary has been on the National Register of Historic Places since 1993. And now, to finish off the details of our Glory Days tour, I'm going to give you some rapid-fire facts. Starting here with the marble artwork of Queen Mary that looks like a coin that I just showed you, that is actually a replica because the original was actually given to Britain. And let's take a look here at the central area of the ship. This central area is actually called the Piccadilly Circus area because it was a very busy area of the ship where first-class passengers would come to gather. Guests from second and third class areas were only allowed here in the Piccadilly Circus area if they were there to worship, and a lot of guests honestly would just come to this area saying they were going to worship but just wanted to see what first class accommodations were like. Currently, the Piccadilly Circus area of the ship is where you can do a bunch of shopping for Queen Mary souvenirs, but they were not open at the time we were taking a tour. And one last important thing to point out here in the Piccadilly Circus area is these pillars that you see. When the ship was originally built, it was built using 58 varieties of wood. But one of those varieties, called English elm, no longer exists, and one of the only places in the world you will see it is there in the pillars that are in the Piccadilly Circus area of the Queen Mary. And now we're going to head towards the observation bar, which has a ton of amazing examples of Art Deco artwork, which is really what the Queen Mary is known for, is an Art Deco artwork style. But on our way to the observation bar, we're going to stop here for a second at the nursery. Each class on the ship, first, second, and third class, did have a nursery, and here in this area they actually gathered items from each of the 3 classes of nursery so that guests can take a look at what the nurseries would have looked like during the glory days of the ship. Now we're going to take a look at the observation bar and Art Deco lounge here on the Queen Mary. This is one of the most beautiful examples of Art Deco artwork within the ship. The whole ship is really themed around Art Deco, but the observation bar is a great example of it, and everything in this bar is original to when the ship was built except for the furniture. And here above the bar where you would order a drink is a beautiful example of Art Deco artwork that was painted by Arthur R. Thompson, who actually has a really interesting history as he was the last person to win an Olympic gold medal for painting before that stopped being an Olympic competition. And that's it here for us at Adventure Isle during the Queen Mary's Glory Days tour. I hope you enjoyed watching our video and learning all of these fun historical facts about the Queen Mary and the art on the Queen Mary and the history of the Queen Mary and why she was built. And we absolutely love taking this tour. If you get the chance, we highly recommend you taking this tour also because it is an excellent experience. Thanks so much for watching. If you're not already, make sure to like and subscribe here at our page, Adventure Isle.